So we're back with Stacey Elder, and the question I have posed to her, and this is a follow up on a conversation that we've had before, but not on air. Um, is man basically good or basically evil? Thoughts?
I think that man is basically good, and then other people and society as a whole kind of gear you towards evil. And so it's like your job to like come on back over.
So how can that be possible? How can man be basically good and society or other people be basically bad? Where's the disconnect there? Because if man as an if individually we're good but collectively we're bad, like I just don't understand how that plays out or how that
It's
works.
gorgeous. Okay. So I think that evil isn't born, it's made, right? So based off of
Okay.
because I think that some people can be born good and remain good? Yes. But then I think that your environment makes you bad. Your environment, how you see things and your perspective. Because it goes back to the conversation we were having before, where if in your social circle, this is seen as good, right? This is seen as what we do, then now your actions reflect that.
Okay, so I'm going to try to convince you otherwise because I
Okay,
disagree.
go for it.
Um, okay, so if it's your environment that makes you bad,
Hmm.
aren't you therefore living a life of blame? Can so if you are basically good, how can um, anything that you do that's bad, you have to then blame something else. Because if you're good in the inside and it's just your environment, it's just your circumstance, just other people, then you have to believe that that you're never responsible for the bad that you do. Is that what you believe? How can you take
What?
responsibility for your own bad actions if you think that you're basically good? Can you actually take responsibility for anything bad that you do?
Oh yeah.
You can,
Hmm. I think
and be
that you can.
intellectually
Yeah.
consistent.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
explain that to me.
Because I think that you are a good person, and so it like reminds me of the same where they're like, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond, right?
Okay, doesn't that
So if
contradict what you
something
just said
negative
though?
happens, no, I don't think it does. Like
Okay.
I can see how you think that, but then I'm like, I don't think it does because I think
Okay.
that the person, yes, should you respond a certain way? Yes. But then I think that, all right, but it doesn't make me evil just because I went the other way. I think that to say that, well, you made a bad choice, that means that you're evil. It's like, well, no.
Maybe we're getting tripped up on evil.
No.
Maybe evil is too strong of a word. I don't think that it is, but evil is not something that we use in normal language very
Day to
regularly. I
day,
think that
yeah.
we
That's what
we think
you're
of
talking. I'm
evil,
like,
we think of
evil?
Hitler and whatnot, and I think that I mean, so I'm coming from a unique perspective in that I'm coming from a Christian perspective, and so I think that on a basic level, I do think that I am as bad as Adolf Hitler. I don't think that I think that he did a lot of terrible things, and by God's grace, I haven't done the terrible things that he did. But at a basic level, I think that I certainly have the potential to be that bad, and it's only by God's
Yeah.
grace that I'm not. That's I mean, so that's where I'm coming from. There's a lot of people that would be way too far for them. But I guess my point is if you so I still don't see how you can take responsibility for something that you've done if you think that you're basically good. You can say that you did it, you can be honest, you can say, yeah, I did that bad thing, but you have to if your worldview is that you're basically good, then it has to be something or someone else's fault that you did it. And you can take
But then I don't know
responsibility
because
because
then
that's a socially
I feel
acceptable
like
thing to do, but it's not you're not really taking responsibility if you're being intellectually
yeah.
honest. Am I wrong?
I mean that's true, but then I always think that from like a religious perspective, like that's what it's all about though, right? Like something bad happens to you, you do something bad, it's like something snuck up on you, something is taking control and you let it. So I'm like, okay, but if that is the perspective, then that means that something else happened, and as a result of that, evil took place, right?
But no,
Does that
I
make
mean, I don't
sense?
think that is the case in terms of I mean, I think that we're just bad naturally, and it's only by God's grace that we do anything good. I think that our natural state is to do bad things, um, and I think that's
But then
supported in
I
what
think
we
that we
see in the
thrive better
world.
when we do good things. So in my mind, I'm like, well, if success, yeah, if success, if being a good person results in you feeling better, you doing better, you being more socially accepted, then that means that that is time to be. If evil was the thing, then evil would be the thing. Then people would like
Evil is
that
the
would be
thing. Look at our
something.
world.
Evil's not the thing.
Yeah.
Evil is. Do I agree that at this point, when you are doing good, it's because. But then that's the thing, right? So when like large corporations or something are like killing the earth, they're like making like what's going on, and like people are like, hey, like what are you doing? You need to do better, you need to be better. But as soon as they do better and become better, then they get more support, they become more successful, because what the people want is for you to be an awesome human being. We want you to be better, we want you to help the earth, we want you to save it. As a result, more people support you, more people, because the moment people find out you're making 6-year-olds work over there in China for nothing, people are like, oh, wait, that's what you're doing? We don't like that. Change or don't, but we'll stop buying your crap. And as a result of that, people change. So do I think that at a certain level, it becomes harder to see the good in yourself? Yes. But do I think that it's always there? Yes. I think that power leads corruption, but you cannot that corruption was like, oh, like I don't think the corruption was the basis of everything. Like I think that people start off with their good intentions, with being a good person and trying to do their best, but then as you get more power, as you have more influence, as other things happen, now you're like, wait, right? I could hire 6-year-olds. Why can't I do that? And then it's like, wait, no, remember, that's not why we hired you, right? That's not the person we hired. That's not the person you were when we gave you the job. So in my mind, I feel like that was the base. That's where you started. You started at a good level. You started as a good person. You started this way, but because you got all of these other things, you were like, oh, it's lit now. Let's do stuff. And it's like, okay, but then the people have to remind you.
But we send executives that do terrible things to prison, right? Because they do terrible things. We don't just say, oh, well, they had too much power. They couldn't control it. Oh, the circumstances were such that they couldn't resist. I mean, we assign responsibility and we hold people accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
Therefore, how can you do that if we're so willing to blame the the power and the whatever? I mean, I understand that power corrupts, but I think power provides a temptation to corrupt. But I don't think it's the power that corrupts. I think it's us. There's something inside of us that makes us corrupt. I don't think that comes from totally external pressures. And let me clarify real quick before you respond. And because I think I'm not denying the existence of good in this world. And I am not even saying, I know I've talked about the fact that I'm a Christian. I'm not even saying that the only good in this world comes from Christians or from Christianity. And the theological term is common grace. That basically God was gracious enough to allow people to be good and to put to allow good to exist in this world. Even though we're all evil, it's basically in spite of our evil nature that we can do anything good. And so the theological term is common grace. It's that God basically gave us common grace. So common meaning not just for Christians, right? So everyone has, people still do good things, which is great. It's awesome. It makes our world a much better place to live in. And so I'm not denying the existence of good, but I don't see. I think where we disagree, I guess, is which one you think you're responsible for, the good or the bad. I don't think that I'm responsible for any of the good stuff that I do. I give the credit to God for that. All the bad stuff, I think that's all me. I guess what you would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll let you speak as soon as I'm
No, it's
done.
fine. Go
But
ahead.
it sounds like what you're saying is that you're responsible for the good stuff that you do, but you're not responsible for the bad stuff. I mean, the bad stuff is the external. I think that the good stuff is the external pressures, is the external, the external being God in this case. But I think that the bad stuff is internal. Is that's just what's in my heart. Um, and I think that it's really is a core belief. I don't think that's something that we can argue out of each other. At some point, you've just got to
Yes.
say, well, this is how I see the world, and so we can end this conversation being totally content, disagreeing because
Yeah.
it's not a logical argument. It is a core belief. It's a foundational argument.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that there's room for disagreement here, but I think that I would argue that if your worldview is that people are basically good, you have to believe, or even just that you yourself are basically good. Some people might be willing to concede that Adolf Hitler, he was evil. But if you think that you yourself are basically good, or just people in general are basically good, I think you have to. Then you can't honestly take responsibility or assign responsibility for the bad stuff that people do, and then it just gets weird when we start talking about punishments, when we start talking about holding people accountable, and just personal accountability and responsibility is something that I hold very dear. I think that those are very important things, and so that's why the worldview of people being basically good just conflicts with a lot of the values that I hold. So I've spoken for a long
Got it.
time. You go.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So if we do have to assign responsibility, do I think that people are responsible if they perform acts of evil? Yes. But I think it's only because you allowed those social pressures to you allowed that, right? So it's not that it took over like internally. I think that it's because you allowed all of that stuff to crush you into becoming that person, right? Like you let what other people think and what other people did determine the way that you acted. So as a result of that, like I feel like yes, you do have to hold them responsible. Like you do still have to go to jail. Yes, you do still have to, pick up stuff on the sidewalk. You do still but then I think that as a society happened to the point that so many people have done it, takes a look at itself and says, okay, but what did we do? Right? I think that that's what happens as a culture. Like when so many people go to jail or get punished for the same thing, then us as a society, we go, okay, all of those people can't be them. At a certain point, it's us, right? At a certain point, we supported this. We have had to do something in order to influence this to happen.
Okay, and then so influencing is different though. But if in the end you're still holding yourself personally responsible for the bad that you do because you were responsible for giving in to the pressures, that still has to come from inside you. Why would you ever give in to the bad pressures if you were good?
But that's what I'm saying, right? So from your perspective, you're like, well, you only give in to the good because other people make you be good, and it's like, well,
It's not other people. I think it's God. I mean, I think it's supernatural that we can do anything good.
wow, okay, okay,
It's not a
okay.
popular
Like,
opinion. I never said it
yeah,
was.
no, I understand, but I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like everything we do on a basis level is like, well,
It sounds like what you're saying is that the bad sometimes is just too much and it overwhelms the good part of us. That the good part that's our core inside us. Sometimes the bad and the temptations and the social pressures or whatever overwhelm that good. In which case,
becomes
even then, it would seem like you couldn't hold the person responsible if that was the case. If it was this battle of good and evil and the evil just overcame the good, then how do you hold the person who is good responsible for the bad that they did if it was the evil that overcame them?
But see,
I
that's
don't know.
that's okay. All right, okay. I understand what you're saying now. All right. So I think of it in the same way that I think of addiction,
Okay,
right? So if I'm addicted to alcohol
sure.
and I happen to overdose or like or and I have to like pump my stomach clean or whatever, it's like, yes, you are an addict, and as a result of being an addict, you drank too much, and that is your fault. But at the same time, it's like, well, you now have to be in a situation where you no longer have access to the alcohol, right? Because on your basic level, when you started out, you did not have any type of, you didn't have alcohol in the beginning, right? You were not an alcohol from birth. You weren't like, huh, give me something to whatever. And there are some people who are, but like you said, that's a special case, so that doesn't count, right? You didn't
Right.
pop out the boom like, oh my God, I need a 40, right?
Give
But
me
later
some.
on, somebody gave you like, just whew. Anyway, but like later on, somebody gave you one, introduced you to it, and now all of a sudden you're an alcoholic, right?
Sure. Right.
And so in the same way, it's like, now I need my alcohol, and then you can't seem to control it. So I don't think that the punishment is in order to, yes, exactly. So I'm sorry, I finished it in my mind and not told you. So, okay, so in my
Tell
mind,
me.
I feel like once you, yeah, we're up here. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, so I feel like once you've become to the point where it's just like, I just need it consistently, I need it consistently. The idea of the punishment is to get you away from that, right? Like when you're an addict and you're a drug addict or whatever, and they try to get you clean, they pull you away from the situation, right? They pull you away from all the people you knew. They try to get you out of that state. They try to get you out of that city. They move you away. They tell you, okay, you can't drink anymore, because clearly it's not something that you are able to control. So do I still hold you responsible? Yes, but I'm pulling you away from it because I know that with access to it, you will make the wrong decision. And not because of your basic level, but because access to it gave you some type of whatever that made you consistently do it. So I'm pulling you away from it as a deterrent and not as a punishment. So yes, so in that way I can agree with you. Like, we are holding the substance responsible, but we're also saying that's because we know that you cannot, like it's
Yeah, but
difficult for
then
you.
you're
It's
not holding
too
them
hard for you.
responsible. Then you're not holding them responsible. It sounds like you're saying that punishment, in this case, taking away the alcohol, is simply to relieve those pressures. Is simply to make the
Yes.
person good again as they naturally would be by taking
Okay.
away
Yeah.
the evil
Then I'm
pressures.
not. Yeah.
But that's not holding them responsible. Then that's blaming the alcohol. And I don't think it's fair to blame alcohol
Then yes.
for someone being alcoholic. I think if they're an alcoholic, I think that yeah, it's helpful to take away the temptations, take away the pressures. It certainly helps people get better. But I think that it's possible to get better even if you don't take away. Even people that still are around alcohol, they still manage to sober up. There are that's it's still possible, and I think that is and they it's got to be. That's why I think that personal responsibility is important. You can't blame the alcohol for the alcoholic. I think that it
Yeah.
still has to come from us, and so and I think that we can do that by God's grace. But I think that the only if I don't think you can blame the alcoholic, and it sounds like you're not, because if you're saying that the punishment, taking away the alcohol in this case, is simply to relieve the pressures, that's not blaming the alcoholic. In the same way that the murderer, locking the murderer up, is simply to keep them from harming anyone else and keep them from the evil pressures
Murdering other
that
people.
make them murder other people. That's not blaming the murderer. That's simply fixing the problem by taking away the pressures. And maybe is that what you think punishment is, and that's why you still are willing to justify what we would call holding people responsible, but it really isn't holding them responsible for the evil that they've done. It's just holding responsible. It's just trying to fix the problem.
Yes.
Is that
I
accurate? I'm
definitely
trying to
agree
rephrase
that
what you're
that
saying,
what
but
we're doing.
is
No,
that
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. I definitely agree that what we do is we try to fix the problem instead of asking, why, right? And then I also think that they were like, I just murder people because I murder people. Those people are evil people. But then I feel like that's a deviation. That's not the standard, right? I think that the people who are like, oh my God, I'm absolutely nuts and bolts and have been since I was 4, when they have like those
Mhm.
little videos and they're like murdering cats and you're like, what's going on? Like, those are deviations, but people who do it have an addiction like alcohol, right? And I do believe that yes, we're not actively punishing them. We are trying to relieve some of the pressure, but then I don't think that that's not the entirety of the situation. Like, we're not just saying we're going to take away the alcohol. We're saying we're going to take it away. We're going to teach you how to function without it, because we know that you can, because we know that you did. We know that there is a form of you, there's a version that was not like this. And so we're trying to get you back to your former state, because once this was introduced to you, you became a different person. So I think of that the same way I think of execs, right? You got too drunk with power, right? And I think that by taking you away from that situation and putting you in a hole and making you see that you're just like everybody else and putting you back where you started, in a sense, right? Now you're able to see, oh wait, like this is what I was doing. This is what I was trying to do. And from the journey from point A to point Z, I lost track of what I was doing. I lost track of where I started. So yes, do I think that we're not, okay, yes. From that perspective, then no, we are not making them personally responsible for it. We're saying that everything else that happened around you is what made you the way you are. And so in order to stop that, we're going to take you out of that situation and try to give you a new one. We're going to try to give you a new perspective. And by giving you a new perspective, now, do I think that the jail system does that? No. Do I think
Yeah,
that we
it
need to do a
doesn't
better
always
job?
work. That's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so in an idealistic world, the idea is to take them out and give them a new perspective, or take them out and take them back to where they were.
But then that
Yeah.
changes, but that affects how you think about justice, you know? And I imagine that you probably would not support the death penalty in that case. Is that right?
What?
Do you
What
support
do
the
you
death
mean?
penalty?
In what way? Do I
Is it
support
ever
the death
appropriate?
penalty? Do I think it's ever? No, I don't.
Okay. I mean, and I
Because
think that's
I don't
consistent
think
with
that
what you're
that's what-
saying.
Exactly. So I'm like, and also I don't think that that's what the point was, right? Like I think that people who try to literally interpret an eye for an eye miss the point, right? The point of an eye for an eye was not, you take out my eye, that means you don't have an eye. The point of that was, when I take out your eye, then I have to become your eyes, right? Like my justice is me filling the part that I took from you.
For me, it's just a call
I mean,
to
I know,
justice.
but
You know, I
that's-
think if someone,
that's what I'm saying.
okay, that's fair. So, okay, and that makes sense. I'm not surprised that you wouldn't support the death penalty, and I think there's a lot of reasonable arguments, even as someone who is a Christian, and I think that there are times where it's appropriate, where it would be appropriate to end someone's life for certain things like murder or rape. I understand, even from that perspective, recognizing that it might be okay in some circumstances. Still, from a policy perspective, taking away the death penalty because it's abused, because it's not, it's just too risky of a policy to have. I get that, and
how do you know
I
you did it? How do you know that that's
right?
That's
So
my thing with the death penalty. Like you're killing people and we don't know.
I get that. So and that's not an issue that I've thought about too much. I don't know exactly where I stand. I still think that there are times where the death penalty is moral, but is it practical? You know, that's is another question. Okay. But going back to the alcoholic example, because I want to tie this back. So
Finish unpacking it. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about, so we were using this whole alcoholic example. We're basically blaming alcohol, and we're saying once you take away the alcohol, and then you bring the person back, you take away the external pressures, and then you try to bring back the good that was inside them, that was at their core.
The person, yeah.
Right. Okay, but now let's take that, let's take it up a notch, and let's say that alcoholic is now Harvey Weinstein. Someone who has been sexually abusing women and abusing his power.
Okay.
We get mad at people like that, and we want to hold them responsible. But is that actually justified if they are like the alcoholic who just had too much external pressures? Are we really justified in getting mad at them? And you know, or should we say, well, they just couldn't take it anymore? You know, people that we talk about people as being, you know, bad people, and we get really mad. But from your worldview, I don't see how we can do that. From mine, we can't. But I don't
think we should be mad. Yes, right. But I don't think, and I think when people get mad, they're not mad 100% at him. I think that people are more mad at the situation. Like I know that's not the point, right? I think that when the Harvey Weinstein came out, right, and Bill Cosby came out, and then that people now, that's how anger works from its core, right? The angrier you are, the more you are angry at the situation, you're angry at society, you're not just angry at that one person, because if you were,
I mean, I am, but okay,
mad, right? Like no one's that mad for like people don't, unlike a deviant. I think that when you're mad, you're like, how did we let this happen, right? How is it that this is acceptable? How is it that he was able to do this, yes, we need to figure out, and now it becomes a construction part, right? Where you have to figure out, how do we handle this, right? How do we rehabilitate this person because he wasn't always like this? What happened? What did society do as a unit in order to allow this to happen, right? Behavior, how did this happen, right? So I from everything that happens, I always form a part of, okay, crazy, that's crazy. I'm angry with him, but then I'm like, okay, but should I be, right? How was this allowed to happen? If the system works, if we're able to put everybody away, if all, if everything is good, then none of this, one person, I could see it. But if there are like 20 people, then now I'm like, okay, but that means that there's something wrong systematically, right? That means that we have created a system, we've created a society where this is okay and no one speaks on it.
Okay, I disagree, but I think we're at a point where we can basically agree to disagree. I think you're being consistent. I think I'm being consistent, so that's fine. We're good. We don't need to argue anymore. I think that I would just leave with a question. How does this conversation, this topic of whether man is naturally good or naturally evil, how does that affect how we look at justice? Can we ever really punish someone, or is all punishments that we put in place simply corrective? It's simply trying to get people back to the good. And I think that's what you're saying. And I guess the second question is, how does it affect your view of personal accountability and holding yourself and holding other people accountable and responsible for the bad that we do? Okay, that's my closing thoughts. Any closing thoughts from your end?
I think that as a result of figuring out what justice is, you also have to think about like retribution, right? Like, do you think that when you hold someone responsible or hold someone accountable for what society's standards are, how do you deal with those people when society changes its mind, right? So decide this is wrong or whatever, and now they're being punished for it, and then society changes its mind, and now you have these people who are, as a result, being punished for something that we now all have agreed as collective is fine. So it's how do you fit within a society, but also try to understand on an individual level what people are supposed to do based off of what people are doing around them.
Okay. We're starting to get into like moral relativism.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other conversation, which we'll have to save for later.
Which is fine. And then also just like, more relativism on a general level. Like as the world gets smaller and people are connecting with more countries and more ways of being, how do you come to a collective decision of what we all agree is right and what we all agree is wrong?
All right, Stacey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Yeah. We've had a lot of good discussions. And thank you so much. I'm sure that I will have you on at some point. If you're willing to come on, I would love to have you back. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to support this content, please subscribe below.